Perfect. Here you
Hello,
are.
everybody.
Hi. Lovely to see you.
Can you hear me, Artem? Okay. All right, I made it. That's a big win. I made
Technical
it,
issues are
and I
not
know
the
which
border.
button to press. Thank you for coaching me through this, and I made it on time. Woohoo! And I made it just enough time to get to hear Karen's amazing talk about um, the hard stuff. Um, Truth be told, that the hard stuff is where 90% of all great storytelling. The other 10% is techniques and skills and experience and practice and all of that. But those with the courage to open our hearts and minds to listen for, to maybe even look for the difficult parts, is going to find the sources of a lot of what makes stories comes alive. So I'm going to try to take the baton over from all the previous speakers and see if I can add and offer a little bit more to this gigantic library of wisdoms here. And by contributing, my part is how do we intentionally look for the good stuff? We may not know, or we ought not to know what we're looking for, but if we have the skill sets to look for them by asking crazy good questions, then I think we will be able to amass a lot of great materials.
It's so great to have you.
So,
I'm just gonna
Artem,
jump off the air.
sorry,
Yeah.
silly questions. I cannot hear you.
How
Whoops.
about now?
And yeah, I cannot hear you. And should I show my slides?
Yeah, I'm gonna show them for you. So here they are. Hope you can
There we
hear me
go.
all right.
Perfect. So how do we break boundaries in consistence with the conference theme, but not merely just breaking boundaries. After breaking boundaries, we'll be able to mine a lot of amazing materials that can be part of storytellings to build bridges, to heal, to connect, to thrive, to prosper. And my particular angle is that people don't ask enough good questions. If you go to the next slide, that sums up about my 14 years of specifically doing story training, story coaching, keynote speaking, researching, and whatnot. The first slide is the questions that begs everyone to think about as a leader, as a member of the society. Am I more of a sage on stage, or am I more of a guide on the side? You could very well be somebody who's really good at both, but most of us, I've found, tend to lean in one or the other. And again, from my 14 years of experience of doing this, a lot of people tend to lean naturally, at least in the beginning, a better guide on the side than being sage on stage. And what I mean by that is that when people come to me and they want to beef up, they want to really build their storytelling skills, there's this implicit expectation and image in their head that, well, I'm going to be a leader, I'm aspiring to be a leader, then of course I should be able to speak like a sage on stage with spotlight cast on me, with a room full of audience listening to me and learning from me. Now, for a lot of people, that is not exactly an appetizing and exciting image, because there's a lot of pressure of performance. Just like public speaking, at least in the US. It's widely known as one of the most feared activity. It inspires more fear in people than facing death. And so the idea of appearing to be wise and moving, an orator, and someone who can speak to inspire, motivate other people is something of a pressure that people assume that they ought to put on themselves. And I'm not here to dispute that. There is a fair and expected element of a leader. But what I am also proposing is that there's a huge opportunity for all of us to be taken advantage of, which is to be a guide on the side. Now, what I mean by that is that as leaders, we can also think of ourselves as a facilitators, as someone who coach others to build their narratives so that we can continue to build bridges over, under, and around boundaries. Leaders don't always have to be the one in front, leading, speaking. Leader can be the ones on the side, guiding and facilitating. I want to make a note that there are two types of questions, since we're going to be focusing on asking crazy good questions. There are the competitive type questions. There are the collaborative type of questions. And competitive types of questions are the ones that if you're in a negotiation process perhaps, or perhaps you are in litigation, or perhaps even if you're a professional journalist, you are pressing your interviewees for information that you suspect that they might be trying to get away from disclosing. But what I'm focusing on today is on the collaborative types of questions, because we have the sense that, oh, to be helpful, to be an agent of change, to be a leader, we must be the one who's doing a lot of talking, when the value of asking crazy good questions is one that can inspire laughter, it can invoke reflections, it can initiate conversations, it can instigate storytelling, and therefore, because of the previous four, it also creates bonds. Now, I don't know if you've heard of this saying here that is going around, at least in my network. The fact that facts don't change minds, relationships do. People hold on to their values and their beliefs, and they don't tend to be changed just by being confronted with facts that call into questions of their beliefs and their values. What sets off real change of mind, for example, is relationship, is trust, is upon being prompted with the good questions and the reflecting, starting conversations, maybe laughing a little bit along the way, and sharing, hearing, exchanging stories that creates these relationship. So I want to take just a little bit deeper dive into, if questions are so good, asking crazy good questions have so much hidden values, let's take a better understanding, let's have a better understanding of the kinds of questions that are out there. So here's an adaptation based on a research. When a researcher follows thousands and thousands of people throughout their day, their conversations, they figure that there are approximately 4 different categories of questions. So up at top, if you have 2 people talking, for example, you have, hey, how are you? Or in the culture that I was brought up, when we see someone we know, or Even if we don't know all that well, we say maybe hello. But then the first questions we'll ask is, have you eaten? Right? Has everybody eaten? Artem, have you eaten? The notion is that if you have a full belly, then you must be in at least an okay space. So by asking how are you or have you eaten, and whatever questions that's culturally appropriate, we break ice, we warm up the conversations, the social exchange, the encounter, and we may be just setting things up for what we're about to really talk about that we don't even know yet. Okay, so that's the first group of questions. The second group of questions is the mirroring questions. So somebody asks me, how am I, Esther? I would say, oh, I'm good. And you? So as social beings, we want to reciprocate what has been offered to us. We reflect back to the person. So we mirror that. Now, that sets off some chit-chatting and small talk and maybe some conversations, and it depends. And then somewhere along the line, the first person asks, oh, hey, by the way, are you still considering retiring early? This type of questions pivot the conversation to something else. Whatever it might be, I'm tired of this, I've gotten enough of this, oh, I suddenly remember that's what we talked about last time, I want to get an update on it. And so these type of questions pivot ourselves away from what is been currently up to the point that has been discussed. Okay, so then the other person responds, and then they talk some more, and then, oh, speaking of which, I'm so glad you asked. What do you miss most when you're not working? Okay, that is the real gold mine of questions. And those are the discovering types of questions, is that I want to learn more. I am considering retiring early. By the way, that's not me. This is hypothetical questions. I am actually in considerations of this, but I don't know. I haven't made up my mind yet. What do you think? What do you miss most when you're not working? So these are 4 different types of questions and that happen organically throughout the course of the day. But the gold is in the discovering questions. So here's really quick is a little bit of research that I did myself because I had an opportunity to give a keynote just last Saturday to my alma mater, Northwestern University here in the States, at Kellogg School of Management, and their alumni reunion. And my topic was leadership communications, and I cover asking crazy good questions. But the little bit of research that I did was because I had a long wait list for my talk, and I always require prep work, a little bit of it. And I just asked people to do a little bit of reading, watching, listening, or answer a couple of questions for me. And one of the questions that I asked them was, tell me 1 to 2 crazy good questions that you like to ask or you've learned from other people. And so I got a lot of great response, but they're all over the place. They are all discovering questions, but they're all over the place. So here's some ways that I've discovered from these very type A, accomplished, highly educated people, what they think of as discovering questions. This is a lot. So let's look at one column at a time from left to right. The first category has to do with the recounting, the recalling, the reflecting questions. Like, how do you spend your time after finishing your MBA? What are the 2 things that help you get to your current position? What's your favorite city and why? What's a weird fact you happen to know? What's your favorite dinosaur? What brings out the worst in you? What type of work lights you up and what type drains you? What's something unique about you that few people know? Okay. These questions focus on what has already happened, but that some of them require us to do a little bit of reflecting, such as the second question is that I'm sure there are more than 2 to 3 things that help me get to my current positions, but by isolating to 2 to 3, I am asking you to think of implicitly the 2 to 3 most important things that get you to where you are, and that requires some reflecting. All right, the middle column are the ones that I call imagining and desiring. What's one thing you want to learn or get better at? What's your dream job? Where's the next trip you would like to take if money and time wasn't a barrier? If you can imagine yourself in a previous life, who would it be? If you could ever had dinner with someone dead or alive, who would it be? Who's the leader you would most want to be like? And what's your retirement plan? Okay, all of these questions have to do with things that have not yet happened, and I'm not sure it would ever happen. But I'm not even sure if the point of it is that it doesn't matter unless it happened, right? The point of it is that what are you after? What are you desiring? And that through which we can learn a lot about a person or a group of people. Okay, the last column would be what I call the pontificating and the proclaiming type of questions. If the universe is a grand design, then why do all mammals need sleep? What's your story? If you had to put a message on a billboard, what would be your message? How would you define a successful life? And last but not least, does luck play a role in capturing senior leadership roles beyond a certain point in your career trajectory, being in the right place at the right time? Okay, these are the ones that tend to ask for your grander view of life, if you will. And there is a time and place for that. There's a time and place for every single type of these questions. But I didn't think that it was a tremendously helpful if we don't break it down to further into these 10 types of crazy good questions, such as asking the origin of how did the project came up in the first place, or how did you get into this industry in the first place, or why are we always doing holiday dinner this way? By asking how something got started, there lies in a lot of intuitive, even if it's hidden wisdom. So the rest of them, I think, are pretty straightforward. Number 2 is why. I think as adults, we don't ask enough why questions. Number 3 is surprised. These are fairly easy questions, but by placing the questions at the right time, such as I had a chance to interview Artem for this Forbes article that I wrote about the work that he had done for the world, really, by organizing this conference for the 4th year. And one of the questions that I asked him was, what has surprised you most so far in the process of organizing this conference? And you would be surprised by asking the questions that has to do with surprises. Number 4 is comparing and contrasting. I'll show you a couple of these questions that I combine them. Number 5 is more. Oftentimes we take a lot of things for granted that we actually don't truly understand it. And so by asking, so tell me more, or how would you define it? Let me to tell you a quick anecdote. I was at the end of the last year with my team talking about search engine optimizations, because I don't spend anything on marketing and advertising and not even business development anymore, but I do care a lot about SEO. And because Google changed things so much last year, we had to have a dedicated meeting for just that. And it was almost luckily in the beginning of the report when I asked, I have to stop and ask a really silly question, pardon me. What is actually direct traffic? What constitutes direct traffic? And how is it meaningfully different from indirect traffic? I just want to clarify. I just want to ask more for more definitions of it. And it turns out that actually nobody really knows. And so we all sent off to our own ways, Googling, trying to learn what is direct traffic. Number 6 is meaning. Just because something happened doesn't mean that we know what it means. Okay, you can ask as much as deep and important and maybe heavy as what does surviving this trauma mean to you? Or you can ask as seemingly mundane questions as how does loving this book of yours, because I love to read and I love to talk about books, and somebody asked a really quick question, is like, what does that mean for Esther to love this particular book so much? That was a 15-minute storytelling because somebody asked, what does that mean to me? 7 is greatest. What is your greatest achievements? Greatest achievement sometimes, or proudest the most. In the scale of superlative, especially if you're looking for the not so obvious ones, they are incredibly revealing. And so I'm going to let you take a look at the handout that I have sent out for you, that you'll, I think Artem will send it out, share it to the conference participants. There are more of these in my book called Let the Story Do the Work, as well as explaining how each of them works. I want to really quickly walk you through, this is all messed up, partly because in the top, it should be conflict, contrast, and contradictions. The arrow got scrunched up on the right side. So apology about that. But what you want to look at is the example. What is your favorite way to waste time? By combining different types of questions, you get not only thought-provoking conversations, you also get to the heart of the story. You get to the story that much faster. Another one was, what was one thing in 2022 you could use more or less of in 23, and why? Tell me one thing you thought was stupid until you tried it. What was one of the best things you've done just because you were told you couldn't? And across all of this, in the questions, in the designing of the questions, is that embedded in these questions are conflict, contrast, and contradictions. Again, the arrow, it's a little scrunch up, so it's conflict, contrast, contradictions. In structuring your story, I'd always teach IRS. For those of you who live in the US who are under the flag of Uncle Sam, that does not mean Internal Revenue Services, but rather it means in the beginning we want to make sure it's intriguing, the middle riveting, and the end satisfying. So if you attended Karen's sessions and being so inspired by her talk and the value and the impact of listening to stories with folks who have gone through trauma, you know that not only, well, with Karen, I guess it's a very easy one because she's such a magnanimous person. But I'm going to ask Arsham to play the recording of me asking Karen those very 4 questions and see if you can hear laughter, reflections, conversations, storytelling, and bonding. Karen, what is your favorite way to waste time?
My favorite way to waste time. Playing a game on my iPad.
Playing video games on your iPad? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your favorite game on iPad?
Oh, I like any game where I can, hidden objects game. Those are
Ah,
fun
okay.
for me,
Okay.
and uh, and solitaire is fun. But anyway, that's yes.
Okay. All right. Next question. What was one thing from 2022 that you could use more or less of in 2023?
Oh, I could use more friends, right? Because we moved in the middle of COVID, and so yeah, we're in a new location, and we're steadily making friends, and yeah, more the merrier, right?
Wonderful. What was one thing that you thought was stupid until you tried it?
It was stupid until I tried it. Oh, Esther, you're making me work here. Um,
Sorry.
Nothing is really
Can I give you some examples?
coming to mind. Yeah, it was stupid until I tried it.
So, some examples I've heard in the
Yeah,
past
yeah.
uh, was sushi,
Oh, yeah.
because it
Mm-hmm.
seemed like it's an incredible amount of work for little bitty
Mm-hmm.
itty food.
Mm-hmm.
Another example for me would be the Apple Watch.
Oh, right.
I
Mm-hmm.
thought I'm way prisoner to digital devices enough. Why would anybody want something literally they're almost like handcuffed to? Until
Right.
I have one. Um, because there are a lot of functions in there that it's very tremendously helpful with aging parents. So
Mm-hmm.
those are some examples. I wonder if you might have something in mind.
Okay, this is going to sound really silly, uh, but uh, I've lived in homes and apartments with hardwood floors for forever, right? And someone told me that in the new house, because of where we live in Oregon, that carpets in some of the rooms would be really, really helpful. And
Ah.
so I said, okay, well, I'll try it, and I love it. It's great.
That's
So,
awesome.
I know,
I
kind of a
don't
silly,
have I don't have carpet
right?
anywhere in my house. I wish I do in some, because
Mm-hmm.
especially in my office for recording, having
Yeah.
carpet makes
Mm-hmm.
all the difference in terms of sound quality. I think I've tortured you enough, but if I may just add one more,
Mm-hmm.
um, what is the best thing you've done just because you were told you couldn't?
Yes. Going to graduate school. One of the best things I've ever done. And when I originally applied, they rejected my application. And so I just got all huffy. Like I got really angry. Like, who were these old white men who could tell me what I could and could not do with my life? Right? God damn it. I wanted to go and be a folklorist. And I wanted to go to that school and study with those folks. Right? I wasn't
Yeah.
going to settle for anything less. So after I calmed down, I called up the chairman of the department and I said, hey, what went wrong, right? And he
Uh-huh.
hemmed and he hawed. He really didn't want to say anything. And I said, okay, listen, you don't have to tell me, but I will tell you that I'm moving to Philadelphia. I'm going to keep bugging y'all until you let me in. So you might as well just give up now. And he just busted up laughing. He says, okay, Karen, let me tell you how to get in. And he told me a backdoor way where I could start taking classes along with everybody else when I was supposed to be there. And so I followed what he told me to do, and I got in.
Oh my gosh, that Karen, that is an amazing story.
Don't ever tell me no.
That's
Karen,
right.
what is
Don't
your
ever tell the amazing Karen Dietz no. I just have really two ending slides, but I know I'm over and would love to see if there are any questions in the chat, or if that's something that Artem, you can facilitate. I don't have carpet in my house, and
Guys, feel free to ask Esther questions about the process or the questions, and while you can do the ending slides while they are typing in. Esther, for some reason the sound is gone. I can see you're speaking, but maybe the microphone disconnected physically. Okay. Esther, we cannot hear anything. Try reloading.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes. And we have a question in the chat.
Okay.
Let me translate it to you. So Alessi is asking, have you had a difficult person you were talking to who didn't want to tell any stories and answered really to the point, like very dry answers? I guess the question is, what did you do to help him like get out of it?
Actually, I was once working on a book for a family, focusing on the founder for their 30th anniversary. And the founder is very famous for a man of very few words. And in fact, the joke around was, if you get an email from Gary with more than 2 sentences, then you should print it and frame it. So that's the guy that I'm going to write a book about. And so I think he's the ultimate challenge. And so I start with what subjects he does like to talk about more, relatively speaking. And in the process, even though I was the book writer, I was the interviewer, he's the one feeding me answers. But even with that role, over time, a bond is born and a relationship is forged. And so I then over time gradually pivot from what he does not mind talking about, in fact, what he offered me more than dry answers to, and then I pivot towards other things that I need him to cough up some answers for me in order to write the book. So I think the principle is always focus, be led by your audience, and try not to lead with what you think the conversation ought to be.
Great. Short and to the point. Love it. We have one more, and we have time for one more. Can you give us an example of where those types of questions can be were really effective and to the point, and what for? What can be achieved by each question? I guess if we have time for just a couple examples.
Can you tell me which questions that they're referring to? Or
I guess it says the types of good questions.
I think when you
I guess
are,
the top 10 ones, like the why, the surprise, those.
yeah, when the conversation gets stale or when the discussions get basically rehashing itself, repeating itself, when you're lacking fresh, good ideas, when you feel like there's something out there, but you're not getting there. Um, Obviously, you don't have to ask questions if these fresh, new, innovative, deep, insightful ideas just keep coming at you, right? You don't need to do that hard work. But that part of the work of designing good questions is required because we tend to get stale over time, especially with a group of people because there's group inertia. So when you want to shake things up, not in any sort of dramatic, violent way at all, but when you want to inject new energy, that's when you want to use those 10 types of crazy good questions to shake things up.
Perfect. And I guess we saw a couple of examples with Karen, so that could be it for the answer. And one more coming from Anna, and then we'll be wrapping it up. How do you see the future of storytelling in your life and the life of a world community? Big question.
Oh, I know. That's the pontificating, proclaiming type of questions. I see, they're everywhere. I think for my life, it has always been the lens in which I see the world. So I don't think that would ever change. In fact, I just get deeper and deeper into it. And the life, and in terms of a world community, I sincerely hope that through the amazing work that people such as Artem is putting forth for the whole world and under no easy circumstances, that it is going to be a healing agent and a glue to bridge an increasingly fracturing world. And I think that is what at least my hope is for the world community. I'd just like to offer one more thing when speaking of hope, that hope is not a feeling, hope is not an emotion, hope is a discipline.
Love it. That's a fresh perspective. I would say, and yes, and hope is a yes, and a discipline too. We shouldn't forget about it. That's good. Esther, it's been so lovely. You've been complimentary to what Karen said, and this is a great segue into like the later part of the evening. So thank you so much. One last question for me. So you know it, by coming to this conference, you've proved that people can unite across borders, and this is a grand meaning that could be instilled into people for a good cause, of course. So what's one more meaning that you would like to get people inspired about so we can live in a world with more bridges?
What is one word?
One meaning, like a statement or a phrase that you would like people to believe in so we can live in the world where there are more connections, more bridges,
Okay, sorry. That was, I forgot you were going to ask me. So that was what I believed in, that yes, hope can be a feeling. We want to feel hopeful. It's a very positive and enduring emotion. But feelings can come and go. And discipline is something we ought to muster by feeling lazy. I don't want to exercise. I am feeling lethargic. It's so cold outside. I don't want to get out, but I know that I must have the discipline to get out, to get some sun. It's a discipline. And so exercise is fun, sports is fun, I love it, but even when I don't feel like it, I must have the discipline to also keep at it. And so the statement that hope is a discipline it's something that I am going to take to heart, and I want to offer to everyone as well.
Thank you. This is a great resume of this talk, and let's light the fire for Esther. I know there's one more question in the chat from Alessa. I just translated it for you. So if you can, please stay and type something to her. Okay. And we'll just be moving forward for our last speaker of the day. So again, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. All right. One more speaker, guys, and